Hey everyone, tonight we were heading back to a time when the oceans were full of monsters, and the bravest souls went out to meet them in what were essentially oversized wooden canoes. You're standing on a wind-battered cliff overlooking the Bay of Biscay, the air so thick with salt you can taste it on your teeth. Below you, a 50-ton creature, a North Atlantic right whale, breaches the churning gray water. Your job? To go out there and hunt it. And your best piece of technology is a sharp piece of iron on the end of a long stick. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this for more than 10 minutes before the sheer bone-rattling cold and terror sent you into a full system shutdown. It was a world of profound hardship and incredible courage. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I love seeing where you're all tuning in from, so feel free to post your location and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind doesn't just blow here, it seems to have a personal agenda. It carves the rocks and gnaws at the thick stone walls of the houses clustered behind you. You're in the Basque country, a sliver of land pressed between the mountains of France and Spain. The people here have a language unlike any other in Europe and a relationship with the sea that feels less like a profession and more like a blood pact. It's sometime before the 11th century, and life is a rhythmic cycle of subsistence. Your evening's entertainment consists of mending a net, or if you're feeling particularly wild, telling a slightly different story about mending a net last week. There are no sprawling farms here, no vast fields of grain. The mountains come right down to the sea, leaving little room for agriculture. Everything and everyone looks to the water. The bay provides fish, of course, but the true prize, the resource that will eventually put this isolated corner of the world on the global stage, arrives every winter and spring. You feel a shift in the air, a change in the village's energy. A horn sounds from a distant clifftop. It's a signal. They've been spotted. The Basques, the whales. Specifically, the North Atlantic right whale. They weren't given this name because they were morally correct, but because they were quite simply the right whale to hunt. They are relatively slow swimmers, easily overtaken by men rowing a boat. Their thick layer of blubber, which is exactly what you're after, makes their carcasses float after they're killed, which is incredibly convenient when you don't have a motorized winch. And most importantly, they migrate close to the coast, coming right into the bay to calve in its sheltered waters. It's a fatal habit, but for the Basque communities, it's a godsend. You're not hunting an animal so much as harvesting a floating deposit of fuel, food, and raw materials that has conveniently delivered itself to your doorstep. Down in the small protected harbor, the men are already moving with a practiced urgency, launching the boats. These aren't ships. They're chalupas, small open whaling boats, swift and nimble, but terrifyingly vulnerable out on the open water. You watch as a crew of 6 or 7 men takes their places, the harpooner, the errant Zale, standing proudly in the bow. His job description is basically poking a swimming apartment building with a sharp stick until it gets tired. The entire community is involved. The men on the water, the watchers in the stone towers, the atalayas on the cliffs, and the women and children on the shore, ready to begin the long, arduous process of butchering the animal if the hunt is successful. This early relationship with the whale is born of necessity. Every part of the animal will be used. The blubber will be rendered into oil to light lamps through the long, dark winters and to treat leather. The meat will be eaten, a vital source of protein. In fact, for centuries, the church conveniently classified whales as fish, which meant their meat could be eaten during the 40 days of Lent when other meats were forbidden. It was a theological loophole big enough to sail a whale through, and it made whale meat a surprisingly valuable commodity in deeply Catholic Europe. The bones will be used for everything from building supports to artistic carvings. The long, fibrous plates of baleen from the whale's mouth used to filter krill will eventually become a kind of prehistoric plastic. But for now, their use is more modest. Nothing is wasted. This is the foundation of an industry. But right now, it feels more like a communal prayer answered by the sea. Historians still argue whether the Basque people developed these sophisticated communal hunting techniques entirely on their own, inspired by their unique geography, or if they adapted skills learned from Norse sailors who may have ventured this far south centuries earlier. As you watch the small boat pull away from the shore, a tiny speck against the vast gray water, it's hard to imagine anyone teaching you how to do this. It feels instinctual, a skill learned from generations of watching, waiting, and surviving in a place where the sea gives everything and demands an equal price in return. The boats are now on the water, but your focus shifts. You turn from the harbor and begin to climb. There's a narrow, winding path, slick with sea mist, and worn smooth by generations of footsteps, that leads up the side of the cliff. The air grows colder as you ascend, the sound of the waves below blending into a constant rhythmic roar. You're heading for one of the atalayas, the stone watchtowers that dot this coastline like silent sentinels. From the base of the cliff, it looked small, but as you get closer, you see it's a sturdy, formidable structure, built to withstand 1,000 years of Atlantic gales. Its stones are gray and covered in lichen, set without mortar, and it seems to grow organically from the rock. Historians still argue whether these towers were originally built for this purpose or if they were repurposed defensive positions from earlier, more violent times designed to watch for the sails of Norman raiders rather than the spouts of migrating whales. Their strategic placement, offering a commanding view of the entire bay, serves both purposes perfectly. You step inside and the wind's howl is immediately muffled, replaced by a low whistle through the narrow arrow-slit windows. The space is cramped and Spartan. There's a small hearth for a fire, a stack of dried wood, and not much else. Here, a man, the atalayero, would spend days, sometimes weeks during the whaling season, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. This wasn't just a volunteer position for someone with good eyesight. It was a formal paid civic duty appointed by the town council. It's the best view in the world, if you don't mind the constant damp and the wind trying to peel the skin from your face. The only company up here is the swirling gulls and the endless gray sea. From this high perch, the entire hunt unfolds like a carefully orchestrated play. The atalayero is the director, the boats are his actors, and the whale is the unpredictable star of the show. From this vantage point, you can see what the men in the boats cannot: the whale's size, its direction, and if there are any calves with it. You watch as the designated watchman lights a small, smoky fire. The thick, dark plume that rises into the gray sky is the first signal, a general alert that a whale is in the bay. Now, the more nuanced communication begins. He might use a system of flags, or wave his cloak in a specific pattern to guide the boats. 2 waves to the left might mean the whale is turning portside. A quick dip of the flag could signal it's about to dive. It's a surprisingly complex system of communication for an era whose main form of long-distance messaging was basically yelling really, really loud. The men in the boats, tiny specks on the water below, respond instantly to these signals, their oars digging into the water as they change course. This whole operation is a testament to communal effort. It's not a private venture for a wealthy merchant. It is the town's livelihood. The profits from a successful hunt will be shared according to ancient laws and customs, the fueros. A portion goes to the boat's owner, a share to each man in the crew, a percentage to the church, and a tax to the local lord or king. Even the man in this tower gets his predetermined cut. The success or failure of the hunt is felt by everyone. There's a sense of profound interdependence here that has been lost in the modern world. In a village this interconnected, everyone knows your business. They know if your hunt was successful, they know if your line snapped, they know if your courage failed you at the critical moment. This shared fate creates an incredible social cohesion, a bond forged by mutual reliance and the shared danger of the sea. You press your face closer to the cold stone of the narrow window. The boats are closing the distance now. The men are rowing with a silent, focused intensity. The whale, a massive dark shape just below the surface, seems oblivious for the moment. The tension is a palpable thing, a tightening in your chest. The watchman beside you is perfectly still, his work of guidance momentarily done. Now it's up to the men down there, to the skill of the harpooner in the lead boat. From this high, remote perch, you are both a part of the action and completely removed from its immediate, violent reality. You are the all-seeing eye, watching the pieces move into place, holding your breath for the moment of impact that you know is coming. The grand, strategic view from the watchtower dissolves and you are suddenly down on the water, The world shrinks to the confines of this single, remarkable boat. You are in a chalupa. It's about 25 feet long with a high, pointed bow and stern, a design feature that will prove essential in the chaos to come. The construction is clinker-built, meaning the planks of the hull overlap, creating distinctive ridges that give it both strength and flexibility. Historians still argue whether this iconic double-ended design was a purely Basque innovation, perfectly evolved for these specific waters and this specific prey, or if it was an ingenious adaptation of earlier Viking longship technology. Looking at the elegant, ruthlessly practical lines of the vessel, it's clear that wherever the idea came from, it was perfected here. The boat feels less like a stable platform and more like a very optimistic leaf on the surface of an enormous grumpy puddle. With every swell, the gunnels dip dangerously close to the churning, impossibly cold water. You are one of 7 men. 6 are at the oars, their knuckles white, their faces a mask of concentration. The 7th is the man of the hour, the errant Zale, the harpooner, who stands braced in the bow. Your safety equipment consists of a rudimentary understanding of how to swim in frigid water, which is to say, you can tee for very long, and the fervent hope that the 50-ton behemoth you are about to provoke is having a particularly zen day. The men row in a practiced, almost silent rhythm, their oars dipped carefully to avoid a splash that might alert the whale to your presence. The only sounds are the soft creak of the oarlocks and the whisper of the hull slicing through the water. The air is thick with the smell of salt, tar, and the sour tang of nervous sweat. Your eyes are drawn to the tools of the trade, lying ready in the bow. The harpoon itself is a deceptively simple weapon. It's a barbed iron head, wickedly sharp, attached to a thick wooden shaft. But here lies the cleverness. The head is designed to detach from the shaft upon impact. The iron point, tethered to a long, thick rope meticulously coiled in a barrel at the front of the boat, will embed itself deep in the whale's blubber. The wooden shaft, now connected only by a short tether, will break away and float to the surface. This serves 2 purposes. It prevents the thrashing whale from using the long shaft as a giant lever to smash your boat to splinters, and the floating wood acts as a marker and creates drag, helping to tire the animal out. It's a brilliant piece of practical engineering, born from deadly trial and error. You are getting closer now. Impossibly close. The dark gray back of the whale is the size of a submerged bus. You can see the pattern of barnacles and callosities near its head, a unique landscape on a living island. You can hear it, a deep, resonant exhalation as it surfaces for air, sending a plume of misty spray into the sky that drifts over your boat and settles on your skin like a cold rain. The smell is overpowering, a briny, fishy scent that fills your lungs. The harpooner hasn't moved a muscle. He is a statue of coiled tension. His entire world has shrunk to the distance between the iron point in his hand and that dark patch of living flesh. He probably wouldn't notice if his own beard caught on fire right now. Then, with a speed that seems impossible for such a large man, he acts. His body uncoils in a single fluid motion. The harpoon flies, an arc of wood and iron against the gray sky. For a heartbeat, there is absolute silence. Then comes the sound, a dull, sickening thud, like an axe hitting wet timber. The harpoon has found its mark. The whale tenses. For a second, nothing happens. Then the ocean explodes. The creature's enormous tail fluke, a slab of muscle the size of a small building, crashes down on the water, sending a wave of green and white foam washing over your boat, drenching everyone in freezing water. The rope, the one connected to the harpoon head buried in the whale's back, snaps taut with a sound like a cannon shot. The boat lurches violently, throwing you against the man next to you. You are moving, accelerating at a terrifying speed as the wounded, panicked animal dives deep and begins to run, dragging your tiny wooden shell behind it into the open sea. The world is a blur of gray water and white foam. You are moving at a speed that feels impossible for a vessel with no sails and no engine. This is the infamous Nantucket sleigh ride, though the Basques were doing it centuries before anyone in Nantucket even knew what a whale was. It's the world's first and most terrifying form of water skiing, and your life vest is made of heavy, soaked wool, which is famously not buoyant. You cling to the hard wooden side of the chalupa, knuckles white as it careens through the waves. The rope is stretched impossibly tight from the bow, humming with a low vibrational frequency that you can feel in your bones. A man stands at the bow, a small axe in hand, ready to cut the line in an instant, if the whale dives too deep and threatens to pull the boat and everyone in it down into the crushing dark. Another man at the stern strains with a large steering oar, not trying to direct the boat but merely to keep it from being swamped or capsized by the violent, unpredictable turns. This isn't a quick process. The initial terrifying burst of speed gives way to a long, grueling battle of endurance. The whale is fighting for its life, and you are simply trying to hang on, to be a dead weight, a constant, exhausting drag. Hours can pass like this. Your muscles ache, your hands are raw from gripping the wood, and the ceaseless cold has seeped deep into your body. But as the whale's powerful surges become less frequent and its speed begins to slacken, your mind can finally grasp the reason you are out here, risking everything. You are chasing a floating treasure chest and the payday is immense. The primary prize is the blubber. This thick, fatty layer beneath the whale's skin, which can be over a foot thick, is the 11th century equivalent of crude oil. When rendered down, it will produce barrel after barrel of high-quality, clean, burning oil. This oil will light the lamps in the great houses and burgeoning cities of Europe. It will be used as an industrial lubricant for machinery, to treat leather, and to make soap. It is a source of light and wealth, and the Basque people are sitting on a near monopoly. But that's just the beginning. The sheer amount of meat on a right whale is staggering, many tons of it. Historians still argue whether this meat was the primary driver of the early coastal hunts, or if it was just a welcome secondary byproduct of the quest for oil. Given the protein-scarce nature of this coastal region, it is hard to imagine that this mountain of food wasn't a powerful motivator in its own right. And still, there is more. The massive bones, particularly the jawbones, are the size of architectural beams and can be used as such in house construction or carved into tools, combs, and ornaments. Even the intestines can be cleaned and used to make waterproof coats and bags. Absolutely nothing is thrown away. But perhaps the most peculiar and prized part, at least from a legal perspective, is the tongue. The tongue of a right whale can weigh over a ton and was considered an extreme delicacy. By ancient Basque law, the fueros, this colossal tongue was often not for the hunters themselves. It was a required tithe, reserved for the local feudal lord, the king, or the church. You can just imagine the tax collector whose only job is to show up on the beach after a hunt and say, "Right then, looks like a good one. Hand over that 2,000-pound tongue for the bishop." It's a weirdly specific and probably quite intimidating job. As the whale finally slows, exhausted and bleeding, wallowing on the surface, the chalupa pulls alongside. The fight is over. The grim industrial part of the work is about to begin. The smell of blood now mingles with the salt spray. Soon, this entire creature will be towed back to shore and dismantled in a process that will create a smell that could knock a buzzard off a carrion wagon. It will be the smell of money, yes, but money that smells like it. It's been left in a fisherman's boot for a month and then set on fire. For now, there is only the heaving gray sea, the exhausted men, and the vast dying animal beside them. The fight is over, but the work is far from finished. You and the other men now face the daunting, almost comical task of bringing your prize home. Towing a 50-ton, waterlogged carcass back to shore with what is essentially a rowboat is like trying to parallel park a skyscraper using a bicycle. It's agonizingly slow, muscles screaming with every pull of the oars. The sleek, fast chalupa that danced on the waves during the chase is now a stubborn beast of burden, tethered to an anchor of flesh and bone. Hours pass. The sky darkens. The adrenaline of the hunt has long since worn off, replaced by a deep, weary ache and the gnawing anticipation of the monumental task that awaits you on the beach. All of this effort, this risk, this bone-deep exhaustion, is governed by a set of rules as ancient and binding as the sea itself. As you row, your mind turns to the intricate web of laws that dictates exactly how this enormous payday will be divided. This isn't some chaotic free-for-all. This is Basque society, and it runs on the fueros. These are the traditional laws and charters of the Basque people, a unique legal system that grants a remarkable degree of autonomy and self-governance. Historians still argue whether the fueros were a truly democratic bottom-up legal code created by the people to manage their own affairs, or if they were essentially top-down charters granted by powerful Spanish and French kings as a strategic way to appease and secure the loyalty of this fiercely independent and martial people. Whatever their origin, they are the bedrock of your society, covering everything from taxation to criminal justice. And they have very specific things to say about whaling. This wasn't just a handshake deal among fishermen. There were pages and pages of written rules, a level of bureaucratic enthusiasm that feels surprisingly modern, almost as if they had a well-staffed department of whale-based legal affairs. The laws stipulated in excruciating detail how the profits from a single whale were to be distributed. The system was based on shares or partes. The owner of the boat and the gear would get a certain number of shares. The skilled Aransail, the harpooner who took the greatest risk, would receive the largest share among the crew, perhaps 2 or 3 times that of a regular oarsman. Every man who pulled an oar would get his share. Even the atalayero, the watchman in the tower high on the cliffs, was entitled to a share for his vital role. A portion, often a tenth, was owed as a tithe to the local church. Another portion was owed as a tax to the king or the regional lord. The system was designed to be fair, to ensure that everyone who contributed to the communal effort received a piece of the reward. The fueros were full of fascinatingly specific regulations. Some, for instance, contained what you might call a finder's keeper's clause for whales that conveniently washed up on shore. If a whale carcass, a balena de costa, drifted in and beached itself, it legally belonged to the owner of the land it washed up on. There was a catch, however. They had to successfully secure it and drag it fully onto their property before the next high tide swept it away. You can just imagine the frantic, chaotic scenes this must have caused. 2 neighboring landowners whose properties met at the high tide line, frantically trying to haul a slippery multi-ton whale with teams of oxen yelling at each other over the property line, while the tide relentlessly crept in. It sounds like the chaotic plot of a 12th century reality TV show. These laws weren't just abstract legal theories. They were practical rules for a world where a gift from the sea could appear at any moment, and everyone needed to know who had the right to it. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the keel of the Texalupa scrapes against the pebbles of the shore. You've made it. The massive, dark body of the whale floats in the shallows behind you, its sheer size seeming to diminish the entire harbor. The news of your success has already reached the village, and the beach is no longer empty. Figures are moving in the twilight, carrying long knives and sharpening them on whetstones. The entire community is mobilizing, descending towards the water's edge. The long, dangerous chapter on the water is over. The grim, bloody, and deeply odorous chapter on the land is just beginning. You stand on the beach year after year, and the gruesome, methodical work of processing a whale becomes a familiar rhythm of life. The flensing knives, the bubbling try-pots rendering blubber, the division of the meat. It's the backbone of your village's economy. But as the 12th century bleeds into the 13th and then the 14th, a slow, unsettling change begins to occur. The watchmen in the atalayas spend more and more time staring at an empty horizon. The hunts, which were once a seasonal certainty, become desperate gambles. The boats go out for days, then weeks, and often return with nothing, the crews grim-faced and exhausted. The whales are disappearing. The constant, relentless hunting pressure in the Bay of Biscay, their traditional calving ground, has had its inevitable effect. The North Atlantic right whale has been hunted to the brink of extinction in these waters. You have, in a very real sense, become too good at your job. The efficiency of your communal system, the perfection of your boats and tools, has systematically destroyed the very resource upon which your society depends. It's the medieval equivalent of automating yourself into unemployment, except instead of a robot taking your job, you've simply run out of raw materials to process. A profound crisis looms. The entire economic and social structure of your community is built on the whale. Without it, the future looks bleak, a return to meager subsistence on a rocky, unforgiving coast. There is only one logical, albeit terrifying, solution. If the whales will no longer come to you, you must go to them. This decision marks a fundamental shift in the Basque worldview. You are no longer coastal hunters. You must become true ocean voyagers. The nimble chalupas are magnificent for coastal work, but they are hopelessly inadequate for long, dangerous journeys into the open Atlantic. A new kind of vessel is needed. You watch as shipwrights in the harbor begin constructing larger, more robust ships, galleons and carracks. These aren't the nimble little whaling boats anymore. They are the heavy-duty pickup trucks of the sea, built with deep hulls to carry months' worth of supplies, large crews, and, most importantly, hundreds of barrels for storing oil. They are designed to travel not just out of sight of land, but to stay out there for an entire season. The question, of course, is where to go. Historians still argue whether the Basques' incredible push into the North Atlantic was a process of slow, incremental exploration, sailing a little further north each year, charting new waters through painful trial and error, or if they were guided by some pre-existing secret knowledge. Could they have had access to forgotten maps, tales from Norse fishermen, or even unrecorded voyages from their own ancestors that gave them a hint of the whale-rich waters far to the north? The historical record is silent, leaving only the astounding results of their expansion. You find yourself signing on with a crew for one of these new voyages. The ship you board is named the San Telmo, named for the patron saint of sailors. It's a common practice, this naming of ships after holy figures. It's part tradition, part a desperate plea for divine protection against the immense dangers of the unknown. As you load barrels of salted meat, hardtack biscuit, and fresh water, the mood is a mixture of grim determination and nervous excitement. Your navigation tools are a lodestone compass that might be telling the truth, a rudimentary star chart that you sincerely hope isn't upside down, and a healthy dose of what experienced sailors call educated guessing, which is mostly just guessing. You are leaving your entire world behind, sailing off the edge of the known map in pursuit of a rumor, a hunch that the ghosts of the whales you drove from your home can be found somewhere in the cold, foggy labyrinth of the northern sea. The anchor is raised, the thick canvas sails catch the wind, and for the first time, you watch the familiar green hills of the Basque coast shrink and disappear behind you, with no certainty that you will ever see them again. Weeks turn into a monotonous blur of gray waves and gray sky. Life aboard the galleon is cramped, damp, and profoundly uncomfortable. The ship groans and creaks around you, a constant symphony of stressed wood. The ship's menu has 3 main options: salted beef so tough it could be used to patch a sail, salted cod, and hardtack biscuits that are now arguably more weevil than wheat. It's less of a diet and more of a long-form science experiment in malnutrition. You perform your duties, manning the ropes, swabbing the perpetually wet deck, keeping watch. In a state of low-grade exhaustion, your world shrunk to this small, floating piece of Basque territory. The camaraderie of the crew is the only thing that keeps the crushing loneliness of the vast, empty ocean at bay. You are a tiny, insignificant speck in an immense and indifferent world. Then one morning, a cry from the lookout in the crow's nest shatters the monotony. Lura, Lura Agerian, land in sight. You scramble to the railing, peering into the misty horizon. At first, it's just a dark, low smudge, easily mistaken for a cloud. But as the ship sails on, the smudge grows, solidifies, and takes on the texture of rock and forest. The relief that washes over the crew is a physical force. Men are clapping each other on the back, pointing, their faces split with grins. After months of seeing nothing but water, the sight of a simple tree is so exciting you almost want to go ashore and hug it. A real, actual, stationary tree, not a mast. It's the little things that get you. As you draw closer, you see that this is not the gentle green coast of home. This is a new world, raw and rugged. The coastline is a brutal jigsaw of granite cliffs and deep, fjord-like bays. The forests are dense and dark, a tangled wilderness of pine and fir that seems to stretch on forever. There are no towns, no watchtowers, no familiar signs of human life. This is a place of intimidating, profound silence. And here lies a great historical mystery. Historians still argue whether your arrival in this land, what will one day be called Labrador, Canada, is a discovery in the same vein as Columbus's, a blind stumble into a new continent. Or are you following a much older secret migratory path, one that generations of Basque fishermen have used to follow cod schools across the Atlantic, their knowledge kept quiet to protect their lucrative monopoly? As you sail into a deep, sheltered bay, the question feels academic. You are here, And you are not alone. The proof is in the water. A whale breaches, then another. The telltale misty spouts are everywhere. The gamble has paid off. This cold, wild place is teeming with the very creatures that have abandoned your home waters. The captain gives the order to drop anchor. The work of exploration is over. The work of industry is about to begin. The first boats go ashore, not with swords and flags to claim the land for a king, but with axes and saws to build a factory. You are not a colonist. You are a seasonal industrial worker on the world's most extreme remote contract. Over the coming days, a settlement takes shape in the protected harbor, which you will call Budas, the Bay of Whales. It will one day be known as Red Bay. Huts are built from local timber, and crucially, you and the other men begin unloading materials brought all the way from home. Among them are thousands of curved, reddish-brown clay tiles. You ferry them ashore and begin roofing the crude structures. It seems like an absurd amount of effort, hauling heavy, fragile tiles 3,000 miles across a violent ocean. But these teyas are a statement. They are a tangible piece of the Basque country, a symbol that this is not a temporary camp, but a permanent seasonal base of operations. When you found the perfect remote location for your new whale oil factory, you wanted to have a little curb appeal. You are not just visiting this new world, you are setting up shop. As you settle into the rhythm of life at Budas, this raw outpost on the edge of the world, you begin to understand that your hunt for whales is only one part of a much larger story. While your crew readies the harpoons, coils the thick ropes, and prepares the small tuxalupas for the northern hunt, you notice other ships in the bay and further out at sea. These are also Basque vessels, but their decks are not equipped for chasing 50-ton mammals. They are here for a smaller, far more numerous, and arguably just as valuable prize: cod. You have arrived at the epicenter of the greatest fishery the world has ever known, the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. The sheer abundance of fish here is the stuff of legend. Old sailors used to claim that you could practically walk across the water on the backs of the cod. That's almost certainly an exaggeration, but you could definitely catch a full meal just by dropping a weighted basket over the side of the boat. This discovery, or rediscovery, of this incredible resource is a pivotal moment in global history, and the Basque were at the forefront, and it raises a fascinating chicken and egg question that historians still argue about to this day. Which came first, the whalers or the cod fishermen? Did your whaling expedition follow the cod fleets, discovering these northern whale populations by chance while seeking safe harbor? Or was it the other way around, with secretive whalers pioneering these transatlantic routes, their knowledge of the rich fishing grounds eventually leaking out and triggering a cod rush? The two industries are so deeply intertwined in time and place that it's nearly impossible to untangle their origins. What is clear is that by the time you arrive in the early 16th century, they are operating in tandem, two massive parallel industries exploiting the riches of this new world. You watch as the cod fishermen work. They haul in their nets, absolutely bulging with fish, and immediately begin processing them. The fish are gutted, beheaded, and split open on deck, then packed in barrels with enormous quantities of salt brought all the way from the salt pans of Spain and France. When they bring their catch ashore, it's laid out to dry on vast wooden racks called flakes, which cover acres of the rocky shoreline. The salt draws out the moisture, curing the fish so that it becomes almost indestructible. This salt-cured cod, known as bacalao, is the true engine of this transatlantic trade. It's incredibly nutritious, packed with protein, and it lasts for years without refrigeration. The only real downside is that, when you finally get around to eating it, it has the texture of a roofing shingle and tastes primarily of salt, with a faint, lingering memory of what was once a fish. But its culinary shortcomings were irrelevant compared to its strategic value. This Basque-produced salt cod became the MRE, the meal ready to eat, of the 16th and 17th centuries. It fed the armies of Europe during the endless religious and imperial wars. It sustained the navies on their long voyages of exploration and conquest. It provided a cheap, reliable source of protein for the burgeoning populations in cities where fresh food was scarce. The demand was insatiable. So while the whalers were the glamorous rock stars of the North Atlantic, hunting the big, dangerous game for a high-value luxury product, the cod fishermen were the roadies. Their work was less glorious, perhaps, but it was the steady, backbreaking industrial-scale labor that truly fed Europe and financed these massive transatlantic operations. Many of the men here are jacks of all trades. A sailor might spend one season on a whaling ship and the next on a cod fishing vessel. The skills were the same, the ships were similar, and the sea was just as unforgiving. Understanding this context is crucial. The whaling station you now inhabit isn't just a whaling station. It's one component of a vast, sophisticated, and incredibly profitable resource extraction network that stretched from these cold Canadian waters all the way to the palaces, cathedrals, and battlefields of Europe. Your days are now filled with the relentless toil of construction. You are not just a sailor or a whaler. You are a builder, an engineer, a pioneer, carving a functional industrial town out of a raw wilderness. Your hands, accustomed to the slickness of ropes and oars, are now raw from hauling stone and hewing timber. The air, once just salt and spray, is now thick with the scent of fresh-cut pine and the dust from quarried rock. You are building the factory floor for the largest-scale industrial operation in the 16th century Americas. This is the 16th century version of a flat-pack IKEA project, except the instructions are all in your head. Every piece is a rock that weighs 300 pounds, and if you build it wrong, it might just explode. The most important structures, the very heart of the entire enterprise, are the fornallas, the tryworks. You help haul heavy, flat stones from the beach and the surrounding hills, carefully setting them in place with clay and sod as mortar. The final structures are long, low stone ovens, often built in pairs, with fireboxes at one end and a chimney at the other. They are designed to hold several massive cauldrons, usually made of copper, which you have carefully transported across the ocean. These are not simple campfires, they are sophisticated, purpose-built furnaces designed to maintain a consistent high heat for days on end. Standing before a completed tryworks, you feel a sense of grim purpose. This is the engine of your entire venture, the altar upon which the whale will be sacrificed for its golden, liquid treasure. But a whaling station is more than just its ovens. It's a small, self-sufficient town that springs to life for a few months each year. You help build the other essential workshops. A blacksmith's forge is erected, its bellows and anvil carried all the way from the Basque country, ready to repair the invaluable iron harpoon heads and flensing knives. A cooperage is built, a large shed where the coopers, the barrel makers, perform their vital work. These men are the unsung heroes of the whole operation. Anyone can get oil from a whale, but it takes a special kind of genius to shape and bind wooden staves into a perfectly watertight container that can withstand the rigors of a transatlantic voyage. It's basically magic with wood and metal hoops, and without their skill, every drop of oil you produce would seep away before it ever reached the markets of Europe. To handle the whales themselves, you need wharves. You wade into the frigid water, driving thick wooden pilings into the seabed to create a pier where the chalupas can dock and unload their gear. To create a solid foundation for the main flensing wharf, where the massive carcasses will be processed, an ingenious and rather dramatic technique is used. An old worn-out supply ship, too unseaworthy for another Atlantic crossing, is intentionally sailed into the shallows and scuttled. You then spend days filling its hull with thousands of rocks, sinking it firmly to the bottom to create a stable, solid base. This practice of creating cribbing from sacrificial ships is a testament to Basque pragmatism. As the station takes its final shape, a bustling, smoky, and ruthlessly efficient outpost of European industry on a wild coast, you wonder about its permanence. Historians still argue whether these stations were purely seasonal, completely abandoned to the snow and silence every winter, or if some of them evolved into semi-permanent bases where a small, impossibly brave maintenance crew might have attempted to overwinter. The thought is chilling. Deciding to spend a winter in Labrador would have been less of a career choice and more of a very slow, very cold form of suicide. The summer here is harsh enough, with its biting insects and unpredictable storms. The winter, as you hear from the local peoples, is another planet entirely. A world of deep snow, crushing sea ice, and lethal, unimaginable cold. For now, the question is academic. The station is built, the workshops are running, and the tryworks stand ready. The factory is open for business. The first successful hunt of the season is over. A massive right whale has been towed to the newly constructed wharf. its dark bulk lolling in the shallow, blood-stained water. The time for building is done. Now the station roars to life, and you are assigned to its fiery, beating heart, the try-works. Your job is to help render the mountain of blubber, which is being sliced from the whale in long, thick strips, into pure, liquid gold. You approach the long stone ovens, and even from 50 feet away, the heat is a physical blow, a dry, shimmering wave that prickles your skin and makes the air waver. A fire has been kindled in the firebox with wood, but soon, it will feed on the whale itself. You and your partners heave the first strips of blubber into the massive copper cauldrons that sit over the flames. The cold, fatty flesh hits the hot metal with a violent hiss and sizzle. Your primary tool is a long-handled skimmer, which you use to push the blubber down into the slowly accumulating hot oil, stirring the foul-smelling stew. The smell is memorable. It's a thick, greasy stench that coats the back of your throat, a combination of burning meat, boiling fat, fish, and something acridly chemical that has no modern equivalent. It's the kind of smell that clings to your clothes, your hair, and you suspect, your very soul. Sailors on ships passing miles downwind will know this station is here, not by sight, but by this unmistakable, gag-inducing plume of black smoke that now billows from the stone chimneys. As the blubber boils, it breaks down. The pure, high-quality oil separates and rises to the surface, while the connective tissues and membranes within the blubber cook into crispy brown chunks. This is the ingenious, if slightly horrifying, part of the process. You use your skimmer to scoop out these leftover bits known as cracklings or fritters and toss them onto a pile. Once they've drained of oil, they become your primary fuel. You shovel the cracklings directly into the firebox, where they burn with an intense, smoky heat. The whale is now fueling its own transformation. It's a perfect, self-sustaining, perpetual motion machine, powered by stench. This efficiency is a hallmark of Basque industry, ensuring that not even the scraps are wasted and that the precious supply of firewood can be conserved. You work in a haze of heat and smoke, your face slick with grease and sweat. It's dangerous work. A splash from the cauldron can cause a horrific burn, and the ever-present risk of a grease fire turning the entire station into an inferno is a constant, unspoken fear. As you toil in this primitive, yet brutally effective factory, you have to wonder where this technology came from. Historians still argue whether the entire concept of a shore-based try-works was a unique Basque invention, created from scratch to solve the problem of processing whales on an industrial scale, or if it was an adaptation of much older technologies. Perhaps they borrowed from Norse traditions or even ancient Roman techniques for rendering fish oil or garum. The scale of this operation feels entirely new, but the basic idea of boiling fat in a pot over a stone oven might be as old as civilization itself. After hours of boiling, skimming, and fueling, the oil in the cauldron is clear and pure. The final step is to carefully ladle the hot liquid gold out and pour it into a series of cooling troughs. After all that fire, grime, and the truly horrific smell, what you're left with is this beautiful, almost impossibly clean, golden fluid. It looks like honey in the firelight. It's like turning a landfill into a sunset. A very, very profitable sunset. Once cooled, the oil is funneled into the waiting barrels which the coopers have stacked nearby. You hammer the bung into the first full barrel with a sense of profound accomplishment. This single barrel represents the culmination of 1,000 different labors, building the ship, navigating the ocean, risking your life in the hunt, and toiling in this fiery corner of hell. It is the first tangible return on an immense investment of courage and capital. Your shift at the try-works is finally over. You stumble away from the oppressive heat and the choking smoke, your ears ringing and your body slick with a film of grease and sweat. Every muscle aches. You walk through the bustling, chaotic settlement, a temporary town that has sprung from the rocky shore like a mushroom after a rain. The air here is still thick with the smell of rendered blubber, but it's mingled with other scents. Wood smoke from the cook fires, the sharp tang of the blacksmith's forge, and the ever-present smell of salt and drying cod. This is your entire world for the whaling season. A noisy, dangerous, and profoundly multicultural slice of Europe, transplanted to the edge of the North American wilderness. As you walk, you see the true diversity of the workforce that these massive operations required. The officers and the harpooners, the specialists, are almost all Basque. But the hard labor is done by men from all over. You see a group of sailors mending a net, chattering away in Portuguese. The man sharpening flensing knives at a grindstone is from Normandy. The apprentice at the forge is a pale boy from Ireland. It's a floating United Nations summit, but with significantly more facial hair and far worse personal hygiene. The common language is a pidgin of Basque Spanish and French, but the most universal communication is a shared understanding of hard work and a mutual desire to not get eaten by one of the massive polar bears that occasionally wanders near the settlement. Your living quarters are crude huts made of timber and sod, roofed with those distinctive red tiles from home. You share a cramped space with a dozen other men, sleeping on rough bunks stuffed with dried grass. There is no privacy. The daily meal is usually some kind of stew, bubbling away in a large pot over a central fire. The ingredients are a daily mystery, but you're fairly certain you saw a seagull looking at the pot a little too long yesterday. It's generally best not to ask too many questions and just be grateful for a hot meal. In the evenings after the work is done, the men gather to gamble with dice made from whalebone, to sing songs of home, or to simply stare into the fire, lost in their own thoughts. This isolated European outpost does not exist in a vacuum. One afternoon, you see several sleek canoes utterly different from your own heavy boats glide silently into the harbor. These are the local inhabitants of this land, the Innu or the Inuit, arriving to trade. They are masters of this environment, and they watch your noisy, smoky industrial operation with what seems like a mixture of curiosity and caution. And here you stand at the center of a complex historical question. Historians still argue whether the relationship between the Basque and the indigenous peoples of this land was one of largely peaceful, mutually beneficial trade, or if it was marked by the exploitation, conflict, and devastating introduction of European diseases that characterized so many other colonial encounters. The archaeological evidence and sparse written records are ambiguous, showing signs of both cooperation and conflict. For now, the interaction is one of commerce. They have brought furs, beaver, fox, and marten, and fresh meat, a welcome relief from salted cod. In return, you have metal goods to offer: knives, axes, pots, and hooks, items that are revolutionary pieces of technology in their world. You watch a Basque captain and an Innu leader negotiate. They communicate through a unique, simplified language that is developed here, a pidgin blending Basque and Algonquian words, supplemented with a great deal of pointing and expressive gestures. You try your hand at it, communicating with a mixture of bad grammar, hand signals, and an enthusiastic smile. It's surprisingly effective for bargaining over the price of a beautiful fox pelt, but probably less so for having a deep discussion about philosophy. This temporary town is more than a factory. It is a crossroads of worlds, a place of intense, transformative contact between cultures, all centered around the pursuit of the whale. During a rare moment of downtime, when no whales have been spotted and the try-works are being cleaned, you walk to the water's edge where several taxalupas have been pulled ashore for maintenance. Up close, out of the water, you can truly appreciate the genius of their design. From a distance, they look almost fragile, but here on the stony beach, they have the presence of a perfectly engineered tool, something honed to a single, ruthless purpose over centuries of use. This boat is the culmination of generations of knowledge, a physical embodiment of your people's relationship with the sea. You run your hand over the hull, feeling the distinctive overlapping ridges of its clinker-built construction. This method, where each plank slightly overlaps the one below it, gives the hull a unique combination of strength and flexibility, allowing it to twist and bend with the force of the waves rather than shattering. Its most striking feature is that it's double-ended, with a high, sharp bow and an identical high, sharp stern. This wasn't an aesthetic choice. It was a critical design feature for both safety and speed. The high prow could punch through the Atlantic swells, while the identical stern prevented the boat from being swamped by a following wave, a constant danger in these waters. It also meant the boat was incredibly maneuverable, able to reverse direction almost instantly without having to make a wide, clumsy turn, a life-saving feature when you're tied to a wounded, angry, and unpredictable 50-ton animal. This boat is designed to be nimble in waves that would make a much larger modern fishing vessel start riding its will. It rides over the swells like a cork, which is a very comforting thought unless you spend too much time thinking about how easy it is to flip a cork. You peer inside at the layout. It's Spartan and brutally functional. There are 5 thwarts, the wooden planks that serve as benches for the oarsmen. You'll notice the complete absence of anything that could generously be called a seat. Comfort was not a design priority. In fact, looking at the hard, narrow planks, it seems the designers may have been actively against the entire concept of comfort. The boat was built for a standard crew of 6, 4 oarsmen providing the power, a steersman at the stern with the long steering oar and the errant sail, the harpooner who stood on a small braced platform at the very front. Later, when the New England whaling industry exploded in the 18th and 19th centuries, their whaleboats would be almost identical to this design. Historians still argue whether this is a clear case of direct technological transfer, the Americans simply copying the proven Basque model, or a remarkable example of convergent evolution, where 2 different cultures, faced with the same challenge, independently engineered the same perfect solution. Looking at this boat, it feels a bit like looking at a shark. It's a design so perfectly evolved for its job that it just stopped changing. The craftsmanship is incredible, especially when you consider the materials. You notice that the keel, the strong backbone of the boat, is carved from a single massive piece of dark, heavy oak, chosen for its rigidity and strength. The planks of the hull, however, are made from a lighter, more flexible wood like beech. This composite approach was a deliberate choice, using the specific properties of different woods to create a vessel that was both tough and responsive. Every curve, every joint, every wooden peg holding it together speaks to a deep, intuitive understanding of hydrodynamics and material science, all learned without textbooks or computer models. This boat is the reason you can hunt the largest creature on Earth. It's your most important weapon, an extension of the crew's own bodies, turning their muscle and courage into a deadly, effective force on the water. You watch one of the lead harpooners as he sits on an overturned barrel, carefully inspecting his equipment. He is not necessarily the largest man in the crew, but he carries himself with an aura of quiet confidence and authority that sets him apart. In the noisy, chaotic hierarchy of the whaling station, his position is undisputed. He is the errant sail. He is the rock star, the lead singer, the quarterback of the entire operation. The oarsmen are the essential rhythm section, but he's the one all eyes turn to when the critical moment arrives. His pay is the highest of any crewman. His opinion carries the most weight, and his courage is the bedrock upon which the entire venture's success or failure rests. A single, well-aimed throw of his arm can make the difference between a season of immense profit and one of devastating, bankrupting loss. To reach this esteemed position required a rare combination of talents. You needed immense physical strength, not just in the arm and shoulder, but in the legs and core to stay balanced on the pitching bow of a small boat. You needed the eyesight of a hawk and an almost supernatural sense of timing. But most of all, you needed a particular kind of courage. To be a good harpooner, you need nerves of steel and a heart rate that, even when a 50-ton creature is close enough to splash you, stays somewhere around mildly interested. A visible sense of panic is considered a serious character flaw. Historians still argue whether this crucial role was a purely meritocratic position, open to any man who could demonstrate the requisite skill and bravery, or if it was a more clannish or even hereditary trade with the secrets of the craft, passed down from father to son within a few select families from villages renowned for producing the best whalers. The man you're watching now is not just checking a generic tool from a shared supply. He is inspecting his harpoons. You notice the iron heads are subtly different from each other. This is his personal set. An experienced errant sail would work with a blacksmith to forge harpoon heads to his own precise specifications, a particular weight, and balance that felt right in his hand, a specific curve and sharpness to the barbs that he trusted. You wouldn't just ask him to grab any old harpoon from a pile. That's like asking a master chef to cook a state dinner with a rusty can opener. He has his specific set of pointy sticks, thank you very much, and his connection to them is that of a master craftsman to the tools of his trade. He runs a whetstone along an edge, the metallic rasp a sharp, purposeful sound in the busy air of the station. You remember the last hunt, watching him on the water. The memory is vivid. As the chalupa closed in on the whale, a profound stillness had settled over him. While the oarsmen strained, their knuckles white and their breathing ragged with effort and tension. He seemed to become calmer, more focused. He stood braced on the small platform in the bow, the harpoon held loosely in his right hand, his body moving in perfect synchronicity with the rise and fall of the boat. His gaze was locked on the whale, not with aggression, but with an intense analytical focus, as if he were reading the creature's intent in the subtle movements of its massive form. And then, the moment. The steersman maneuvered the boat for the perfect shot. The harpooner did not rush. He waited, his body coiling like a spring, until the whale surfaced just so, its broad back exposed, glistening and black. His arm blurred forward, a single explosive release of all that stored energy. The harpoon flew true, its iron head striking home with a sound you felt more than heard. It was an act of violence, yes, but it was also a moment of supreme, undeniable skill, a dangerous art form, perfected on the world's most turbulent and unforgiving stage. The dead whale has been hauled into the shallows, its immense body secured to the shore with heavy ropes and anchors. The water around it is a murky, reddish-brown. The hunt was the dramatic, high-stakes overture. Now, the main performance begins, the flensing. This is the methodical, bloody, and industrial process of stripping the whale of its valuable assets. If you thought the smell from the try-works was bad, welcome to the opening act. It's a raw, metallic, and deeply biological odor that seems to bypass your nose and punch your brain directly. You'll never be able to smell the clean, salty air of the ocean again without a faint, lingering memory of this moment creeping into the back of your mind. It is the smell of a massive-scale butchery, and you are one of the butchers. Your primary tool is a flensing knife. It's not a knife in the way you might imagine. It's more like a razor-sharp spade at the end of a long wooden pole. Wielding it requires strength, precision, and a complete disregard for the slippery, treacherous conditions underfoot. The entire beach around the whale has become a slick of oil and blood. You struggle for footing on the wet, greasy stones, trying to work with a lethally sharp blade the size of a shovel, while standing on a surface that has all the traction of a freshly buttered water slide. Workplace safety is, to put it mildly, a concept that will be invented in the distant future. It's like being a butcher, except your cutting board is an entire beach and the steak you're about to trim weighs more than your whole village. The process is systematic. The first cuts are made around the head and fins. Then, a long, straight line is scored down the length of the whale's back. A hook, attached to a powerful capstan on the shore, is embedded into the edge of the thick blubber. Several men begin to heave on the capstan bars, turning it slowly and deliberately. As the winch turns, it begins to peel the blubber away from the muscle beneath, almost like you're peeling a monstrous orange. Your job is to use your long-handled knife to help the separation, slicing through the connective tissue where the blubber stubbornly clings to the flesh. The whale's body rolls slowly in the water with each turn of the capstan, exposing a new section to the flensers. It's a gruesome, but remarkably efficient system. The question of where this system originated is a matter of debate. Historians still argue whether these specific, highly organized flensing techniques were a closely guarded trade secret of the Basque people, giving them a crucial competitive edge, or if these methods were simply common knowledge among all northern maritime cultures, with the Basques' only true advantage being their unparalleled scale and organization. As you work, a strange and eerie phenomenon occurs. Even though the whale has been dead for hours, the carcass begins to steam. Thick plumes of vapor rise from the exposed muscle and from the whale's open mouth, hanging in the cold Canadian air as if the creature were still breathing. This is caused by the incredible amount of residual heat stored in the animal's core, a result of its unique circulatory system designed to keep it warm in Arctic waters. It's a slightly unsettling sight, a ghost of life that serves as a reminder of the sheer biological power of the animal you are now dismantling. Strip by long, heavy strip, the blanket of blubber is peeled away and cut into smaller, more manageable blocks. These blocks are then hauled up the beach in carts or on sleds to the waiting try-works, where they will be rendered into oil. The flensing of the blubber is the first and most important phase of the harvest, but it is far from the end. The massive steaming carcass, now stripped of its fatty outer layer, still holds a fortune in meat, bone, and baleen. Your work here on this bloody shoreline is not even close to being done. The season draws to a close. The days grow shorter, The wind carries the first hint of a truly lethal cold, and the last of the whales have migrated south. The bustling station at Red Bay begins to shut down. The fires in the try-works are extinguished, the tools are cleaned and stored, and the crude huts are shuttered. Your galleon, which arrived in this land heavy with supplies and hope, is now loaded with a different, far more valuable cargo. You watch as hundreds of heavy wooden barrels, each one meticulously crafted by the coopers and filled with the pure golden oil you rendered, are carefully hoisted into the ship's hold. Each barrel is a container of stored sunlight, a promise of light for the dark cities of Europe. The ship is weighed down with wealth, and as you set sail, leaving the raw, wild coast of Labrador to the encroaching winter, the mood is one of triumph and relief. You have survived, and you are returning home rich. After the long, arduous voyage back across the Atlantic, your ship sails not into your small village harbor, but into one of the great trading hubs of Europe, perhaps Rouen in France, or Bristol in England, or the grand port of Bruges. Here the barrels are unloaded onto the docks and their true value becomes apparent. You are no longer just a whaler. You are at the end point of a massive international supply chain. Merchants and agents jostle to inspect the cargo and negotiate prices. This oil, which the Basques call lumera, is the most valuable commodity of its kind in the world. For several centuries, you and your people have a near-total monopoly on its production and trade. The Basques have the 16th century equivalent of a global tech monopoly. Everyone wants your product, only you really know the most efficient way to get it, and you aren't exactly sharing the source code. Historians still argue whether this powerful economic dominance was the primary engine of the Basques' unique political autonomy from France and Spain, or if their fiercely independent nature, codified in their fueros, was the pre-existing condition that allowed them to build this monopoly in the first place. The primary reason for the oil's immense value is light. Before your product arrived in these quantities, a city like London or Paris would plunge into a terrifying, profound darkness after sunset. The only options for light were flickering, smoky and foul-smelling tallow candles or torches that were a constant fire hazard. Your whale oil changes everything. It burns with a bright, clear, and relatively smokeless flame. It is the high-definition television of the 16th century. Municipal governments buy it by the ton to fuel the first streetlights, making the cities safer and extending the hours of commerce and social life. Wealthy merchants use it in their homes in sophisticated new lamps. Most critically, it is used to light the coastal lighthouses, providing a powerful, reliable beam that saves countless ships and sailors from wrecking on the shores. But the oil's influence doesn't stop with light. It quietly fuels other, equally important transformations. It is a superior lubricant for the gears of clocks and early machinery. It is used to treat and waterproof leather, making it softer and more durable. And perhaps most surprisingly, it is a key ingredient in the production of soap. When boiled with ash and lye, the whale oil undergoes saponification, creating a hard, effective soap that is a massive improvement over the soft, greasy soaps made from animal fat. It turns out that the secret to a cleaner, gradually less plague-ridden Europe was, ironically, to be found by boiling down a giant sea mammal from a remote bay in Canada. History truly has a strange sense of humor. From the grandest lighthouse to a simple bar of soap, the product of your dangerous labor in that smoky, faraway station is now woven into the very fabric of European life, changing the world one barrel at a time. Back in the cold, blood-stained waters of the bay, the work on the whale carcass continues. The thick blanket of blubber is gone, hauled away to the smoky try-works, but the remaining mountain of flesh and bone is still a treasure trove. The focus now shifts to the whale's head, which is the size of a small carriage. Your next task is one of the strangest and most claustrophobic jobs in this whole grisly enterprise, harvesting the baleen. You and a few other men, armed with axes and saws, must now enter the whale's immense open mouth. It's a cavernous space, dark and slick, smelling of the deep ocean. Your target is the curtain of long, fibrous plates hanging from the upper jaw. This is baleen, and in the centuries to come it will become almost as valuable as the oil. You reach up and touch one of the plates. It's a peculiar material, both hard and flexible, and slightly rough to the touch. Baleen is made of keratin, the same protein that makes up your hair and fingernails. The whale, however, has made the bold design choice of using it to construct a giant, intricate spaghetti strainer inside its mouth, which it uses to filter tiny krill and crustaceans from the enormous gulps of water it takes in. There are hundreds of these plates, some of them many feet long, overlapping to form a dense, bristly mat. Your job is to hack this entire structure out of the whale's jaw, a task of immense brute force labor in a slippery, unpleasant environment. Once harvested, the plates of baleen are scraped clean, bundled, and stored for the voyage home. Its value lies in its unique physical properties. It is incredibly strong, yet remarkably lightweight and flexible. When heated in water, it can be bent and molded into almost any shape, which it will retain once it cools. It can be split into fine, tough fibers or used in wide, supportive strips. In a world without spring steel or plastic, this combination of qualities makes it a miracle material. And as European economies grow and fashions change, the demand for baleen will skyrocket, leading to a debate that historians still ponder. Did the rising value of baleen eventually alter whaling practices, causing hunters to specifically target whales with the longest, highest quality plates? Or did it always remain a valuable but secondary opportunistic byproduct of the hunt for oil? In the workshops of Europe, this raw, strange material from a whale's mouth is transformed. Its most famous use, of course, is in high fashion. It's one of history's great ironies that the rigidly structured, elegant hourglass figure of a wealthy European lady was achieved using a substance harvested from the mouth of the world's largest and most distinctly non-hourglass-shaped animal. Thin, strong strips of baleen were used as the bones in corsets, cinching waists and providing support. Larger, more flexible pieces were used to construct the enormous hoops that supported the fashionable wide skirts of the era. But its use went far beyond clothing. Before plastic, if you saw an object that needed to be both strong and bendy, there was a very good chance a whale was involved. It was used for the ribs of umbrellas and the springs in early furniture and clocks. It was cut into strips to make durable buggy whips and riding crops. Split into fine strands, it became the bristles for all sorts of brushes, from delicate hairbrushes to the massive, bristly cylinders used in the first mechanical street sweeping machines. It was in essence the plastic of the pre-industrial world. A versatile, adaptable, and indispensable material that shaped everything from the silhouette of a noblewoman to the cleanliness of a city street, all of it sourced from that dark, cavernous space inside a whale's mouth. With the blubber stripped and the baleen harvested, the whale carcass is now a mountain of meat and bone. But the harvest is still not complete. The Basque principle of total utilization, born from centuries of subsistence living, dictates that nothing of value is ever wasted. Your next task is to help butcher the tons of meat. Some of it will be eaten fresh by the crew at the station, a vital source of protein that provides a welcome, if slightly strange tasting, break from the monotony of salted cod. Most of it, however, will be salted and packed into barrels, just like the fish, to be sold back in Europe as a cheap source of food for the poor, or as rations for soldiers and sailors. Whale meat was a staple, but let's be honest, it never won any culinary awards. Contemporary accounts describe it as being very dark, tough, and having a strong, fishy flavor. It was, in short, an acquired taste. And the word acquired is usually just polite code for you have to be very, very hungry to truly enjoy this. Once the meat is stripped, you turn your attention to the skin. The hide of a whale is not something most people think about, but it can be tanned into a remarkably strong and durable leather. You and the other men use sharp knives to carefully peel the skin away from the underlying muscle. It's then scraped, treated with salt, and rolled into bundles for transport. Back in the tanneries of Europe, this porpoise hide, as it was often called, was prized for its toughness and water-resistant qualities. It was used to make sturdy boots, belts, and bags. One of its most valued uses was in bookbinding. The beautiful, gilt-edged cover of a rare book in a European library might very well be bound in the tanned skin of a whale harvested in these cold Canadian waters. Telling a wealthy patron that their precious philosophical text is wrapped in the hide of a giant sea mammal would certainly be a great conversation starter. Or ender, depending on the person. The true economic importance of this is a matter of some discussion. Historians still argue whether the production of whale leather was a significant planned part of the economic model for these voyages, or if it was mostly a marginal ad hoc activity designed to extract a little extra value from the carcass after the primary goals were met. And there were other, even more exotic products to be found. While your primary target here is the right whale, your crews sometimes hunt sperm whales as well. Inside the massive head of a sperm whale is a unique, waxy substance called spermaceti. When processed, this yields the highest quality, smokeless oil in the world, perfect for making clean-burning, beautiful white candles. But a portion of it, when pressed and purified, becomes a pure white wax. This wax was a highly prized ingredient in the apothecaries and cosmetic workshops of Europe. It was the base for luxurious ointments, salves, and the first true cold creams. The most fashionable and expensive skin cream used by a lady in the royal court of Paris likely had its origin story in the forehead of a sperm whale off the coast of Labrador. It's the ultimate farm-to-face product line, if your farm happens to be the entire North Atlantic. Finally, even the skeleton is not abandoned. The massive bones are too heavy and bulky to transport back to Europe in large quantities, but some are taken. The jawbones can be used as dramatic archways for gates, and other bones are a perfect medium for carving, a practice known as scrimshaw. The rest are left on the beach picked clean by birds and sea creatures, a ghostly white monument to the season's hunt. Every single part of the animal, from its waxy brain fluid to its skin, from its meat to its bones, has a use and a market. The whale is not just a source of oil and baleen, it is a floating factory, a complete and total source of raw materials for a dozen different global industries. The season is over, and the last barrels of oil are secured in the hold. As the galleon prepares for the long journey home, you are summoned to the captain's cabin. The ship's pilot, a weathered man whose face is a map of 100 voyages, unrolls a chart on the small wooden table. It is a thing of beauty and mystery, drawn by hand on a large piece of vellum. It shows the jagged coastline of Labrador, the islands of Newfoundland, and the vast empty expanse of the North Atlantic. But it is unlike any modern map. The lines are decorated with ornate compass roses, the sea populated by illustrated monsters, and the coast is marked with names that you would not find in any official atlas. This is not a document for public consumption. This is one of the most valuable and closely guarded secrets of the entire Basque nation. In the 16th century, knowledge is power, and this map is the key to a fortune. Sharing the location of your prime whaling grounds with an English or Dutch rival would be like Coca-Cola deciding to hand its secret formula directly to Pepsi. It's just not done. In fact, if you were caught with such a map and suspected of selling it, you would almost certainly end up mysteriously falling overboard on a calm night. The Basque dominance of the whaling industry was built not just on better boats or braver harpooners, but on a fiercely protected monopoly of information. The question of how this secrecy was maintained is a fascinating one. Historians still argue whether the Basques had a formal institutionalized guild for their pilots, and cartographers a centralized body that controlled the creation and distribution of charts, much like the famous Portuguese Casa da India, which managed all of their empire's navigational data. Or was the secrecy a more informal but no less effective cultural tradition, with knowledge passed down from master to apprentice, from father to son, within the tight-knit communities of the whaling ports? You look closer at the strange place names written on the map in elegant script. Where a modern map would say Strait of Belle Isle, this one reads Baleen Bada, the Bay of Whales. Instead of Cape Breton, you see a name that translates to the Land of Fogs. This was a brilliant and deliberate form of cartographic encryption. By giving their own Basque language names to every key harbor, cape, and island, they created a landscape that was completely indecipherable to an outsider. An English captain could capture one of these precious charts, look at it, and see nothing but a coastline of places named after breakfast foods, local saints, and geographic features that made no sense without the oral tradition to explain them. The map was useless without the key, and the key was kept in the minds of the Basque pilots. Learning the route to the whaling grounds was about more than just reading this chart. The pilot explains that the map is just a reminder, a mnemonic device. The real navigation is a complex tapestry of memorized knowledge. It's about knowing how the current runs in a particular strait, recognizing the shape of a distant mountain range, and reading the color of the water. It's about celestial navigation, using the astrolabe and quadrant to find your latitude from the stars, a skill the Basque pilots were renowned for. And it's about listening to the stories passed down through generations. You sail north until the icebergs look like sleeping giants. Then you steer towards the island that has a rock formation that looks like a grumpy bear. It's a science, yes, but it's also an art form. A deep, intuitive conversation with the ocean itself. This mastery of navigation and the jealous guarding of its secrets are what allow you to return here year after year, while your competitors are still struggling to find their way through the treacherous fog-shrouded waters of the North Atlantic. For the better part of 2 centuries, you have been the undisputed kings of this cold northern world. The transatlantic whaling trade is a Basque enterprise, built on your ships, your skills, and your fiercely guarded secrets. The wealth it generates flows back to your home ports, funding the construction of grand churches and strengthening your unique political autonomy. But secrets, especially ones that generate this much profit, rarely stay secret forever. By the end of the 16th century, the rising maritime powers of Northern Europe, specifically England and the Netherlands, have noticed your booming business. They have growing cities that need lighting, expanding industries that need lubricants, and powerful ambitions that cannot tolerate a foreign monopoly on such a vital resource. It's like you're the only person in town who knows how to make a perfect pizza, and suddenly everyone else is trying to peek into your kitchen window to steal the recipe. Their method for breaking your monopoly is as old as business itself: industrial espionage and corporate raiding. They begin by throwing huge sums of money at your most skilled men. They lure away experienced Basque pilots with promises of riches to guide their ships through the treacherous northern passages. They hire your veteran harpooners to serve on their vessels and, more importantly, to train a new generation of English and Dutch whalers. They basically threw money at your best men until a few of them decided that their loyalty to a hefty pile of gold was slightly stronger than their loyalty to the old traditions of secrecy. It's a bitter pill to swallow, watching your own countrymen sell the knowledge that was once the exclusive birthright of your people. Of course, simply hiring an expert doesn't guarantee success. The entire whaling operation is a complex industrial system, and the English learned this the hard way. Their first major whaling voyage to the Arctic island of Spitsbergen, or Svalbard, in 1611, was a textbook disaster. Their newly trained crews, guided by Basque experts, were perfectly capable of hunting and killing the whales. The problem came afterward. They had no idea how to properly render the oil. They didn't build the sophisticated stone-lined try-works that you have perfected. Instead, they simply tried to boil the blubber in open cauldrons on the beach, a messy and spectacularly inefficient method. Their first attempt at making whale oil was like watching someone try to bake a cake by just throwing all the ingredients into a bonfire. The result was a lot of black smoke, a huge greasy mess on the pristine Arctic landscape, and almost zero usable oil. But the English and Dutch were persistent, wealthy, and they learned from their mistakes. They copied your try-works designs, perfected their techniques, and began to build fleets that could rival your own. And this rising external pressure coincided with a period of internal weakness. Historians still argue whether the eventual decline of Basque whaling dominance was caused primarily by this new, aggressive foreign competition, or if it was accelerated by devastating internal factors. At the end of the 16th century, the King of Spain, Philip II, began commandeering the largest Basque galleons and conscripting their most experienced sailors, the very heart of your whaling fleet, for his imperial wars, most famously for his doomed Spanish Armada. Your ships were sent to the bottom of the English Channel instead of to the whaling grounds of Labrador. The result of all this is a new and deeply unsettling sight. As you sail into your traditional hunting grounds, you now see other sails on the horizon. These are not Basque ships. They fly the flags of England or the Dutch Republic. The comfortable solitude of your private enterprise is over. The ocean, which once felt like your own vast private estate, is now crowded with rivals. The competition for the whales is about to become direct, intense, and in the icy waters of the far north, incredibly violent. The world of whaling is shifting. As the seasons pass, the voyages to Labrador yield diminishing returns. The right whales there, just like in the Bay of Biscay centuries before, are growing scarce from the relentless hunting pressure. But new discoveries in the far frozen north have opened up a fresh frontier. You now find yourself on a ship sailing for Svalbard, a remote mountainous archipelago deep within the Arctic Circle. You've sailed so far north that, for months on end, the sun just circles the sky, never setting. It's a beautiful, desolate landscape of glittering glaciers, towering peaks, and a sea choked with ice. It's also deeply confusing for your sleep schedule. The prize here is a new type of whale, the formidable bowhead, a true ice whale, slow-moving and possessing a skull thick enough to break through the sea ice, and a layer of blubber that is even richer than a right whale's. You have followed the whales to the very top of the world. The problem is, so has everyone else. As your ship navigates a maze of ice floes into a promising bay, you see them, the tall masts and unfamiliar flags of English and Dutch whaling ships. The secrets are all out now, and this pristine Arctic wilderness is about to become the arena for a bitter and often violent struggle for resources. The competition is no longer a matter of who has the best maps, it's a matter of who has the most cannons. Your job description has suddenly and unpleasantly expanded from whale hunter to include amateur cannon operator. It's a classic and unwelcome case of scope creep in the workplace. The conflicts start small. A rival crew might sail aggressively close to your Tixalupas during a hunt, trying to drive the whale away. They might anchor their ship to block your access to a prime bay. Then it escalates. Shore stations are raided, barrels of precious hard-won oil are stolen or smashed, and ropes are cut. It's a dirty, undeclared war fought in the freezing twilight of the midnight sun. Historians still argue whether this violence at Svalbard was just a series of chaotic pirate-like skirmishes driven by the greed of individual captains, or if it was a form of sanctioned low-grade warfare with the governments in London and Amsterdam, implicitly encouraging their whalers to use force to establish a national monopoly. The situation becomes so formalized that the different nations build fortified shore stations. The Dutch establish a legendary settlement called Smeerenburg on the island of Amsterdamoya. At its peak, it is a bustling, chaotic, and incredibly profitable Arctic boomtown, nicknamed Blubbertown. It has tryworks for over a dozen ships, workshops, living quarters, a fort armed with cannons, and even bakeries and vendors. It was the Las Vegas of the Arctic Circle, a town built entirely on a high-stakes gamble, with a truly unique and overpowering smell, and where fortunes were won and lost daily. Except with far, far more blubber. You find yourself in the middle of a tense standoff. Your Basque ship, perhaps sailing under a Dutch contract, is rendering a whale at your temporary shore station, when an English ship, bristling with cannons, sails into the bay. They claim exclusive rights to this territory by decree of their king. Your captain, citing his own charter, refuses to leave. Men line the railings of both ships armed with muskets. A cannon fires a warning shot across your bow, the boom echoing off the glaciers with a deafening crack. The hunt for the whale is now secondary. The primary challenge is surviving the other hunters. The days of the quiet, monopolistic industry are definitively over. The cold waters of the Arctic have become a battlefield, and the prize is still the same. The golden oil that lights the lamps of a distant civilized Europe that has no idea of the cold, brutal violence its comfort requires. You stand on the deck of your ship, anchored in a bay in Svalbard, and watch a Dutch vessel unload supplies for its shore station. It's a scene of overwhelming, organized power. The Dutch ship is larger and more heavily armed than yours. Their shore station isn't a temporary camp, it's a small fortified town with high walls and rows of identical tryworks, all operating with a relentless industrial efficiency. They have more men, more boats, and more capital than you could ever dream of. It forces you to confront a deeply uncomfortable question. Are your time-honored methods, the ones that gave you a global monopoly for centuries, still the best way? Or are you becoming a relic in a world that has learned your secrets and is now improving upon them? Your method of whaling is a perfected craft. It has worked almost unchanged for over 500 years. It's the ultimate expression of the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" school of thought. The problem is your competitors have just shown up with a much bigger, more expensive, and more heavily armed onetkorn that is threatening to break your entitouran into tiny pieces. The core of your technology remains the small, open Tixalupa and the hand-thrown harpoon. It's an art form, relying on the immense skill of individual men. For centuries, the height of your technological advancement was making the pointy stick slightly pointier. Meanwhile, the Dutch are mounting cannons on their ships and holding shareholder meetings to fund their expeditions. This difference in scale is the key. Your voyage was likely financed by a small consortium of merchants from your hometown. It's a high-stakes but relatively small-scale venture. The Dutch, on the other hand, have applied the full power of early modern capitalism to the hunt. Their whaling fleets are often owned and operated by huge joint stock companies, like the famous Noordsche Compagnie, Northern Company. These companies can raise vast sums of money, allowing them to build larger ships, hire more men, and absorb losses that would bankrupt a smaller Basque enterprise. They approach whaling with the same cheerful, overwhelming efficiency they use to build dikes and reclaim land from the sea. They don't just set up a camp, they build a city dedicated to the enterprise. This prompts a debate that continues to this day. Historians still argue whether the Basque failure to adapt and scale up was a conscious cultural choice or an unavoidable economic reality. Was it a form of stubborn pride? A belief that your perfected artisanal craft was superior to the brutish industrial methods of your rivals? Or were you simply unable to compete because the Basque economic model based on independent towns and family businesses could never raise the massive amounts of capital needed to build the kind of fleets and fortified stations the Dutch were fielding? The answer is likely a combination of both. There is a deep conservative pride in your traditions, but there is also the hard reality that you cannot fight a corporation with a craft guild. You look at the hand harpoon resting on the deck. It is a beautiful, deadly, and perfectly balanced tool. In the hands of a master, it is a work of art. For 500 years, it was the most advanced whaling weapon on the planet. But it has not changed. You hear stories of inventors working on new ideas, like cannons that fire harpoons, or even harpoons that explode on impact. But these are just whispers. Ideas for a future century. For now, you are stuck in the present, watching as the artful craft of your ancestors is being systematically overwhelmed by the sheer brute force scale of modern industry. The world is changing, and the slow, ominous feeling is that it might be changing without you. The years pass and the world you knew dissolves like sea foam on the shore. The violent, chaotic showdowns in the Arctic give way to a new settled reality, one in which your people are no longer the masters. The Dutch and the English, with their vast capital and massive fleets, now dominate the whaling grounds of Svalbard and beyond. A Basque whaling galleon, once the undisputed king of these waters, is now a rare and slightly nostalgic sight. The great transatlantic enterprise, which projected the power of your small nation across the globe, is slowly winding down. It is the end of an empire. You now find yourself in a position that would have been unthinkable in your youth. You are still a whaler, your skills as sharp as ever, but you sail on a Dutch ship, hired as a specialist harpooner. You are now a freelance consultant in the high-stakes, highly specific field of poking giant sea mammals with sharp sticks. The pay is good. The Dutch are ruthlessly efficient employers, but it is a galling experience to teach the sacred techniques of your ancestors to a cheerful blonde giant named John, who pays you in foreign guilders. You see your knowledge, once a guarded national treasure, transformed into a simple commodity, bought and sold on the open market. This is the fate of many of the best Basque whalers of your generation. It is a central point of a long-running historical debate. Did the Basque whaling industry truly collapse, or did it just transform, with your countrymen shrewdly pivoting from the now unprofitable business of running their own fleets to the more stable work of providing their unparalleled expertise to the new market leaders? The decline is not just due to competition. The same ecological tragedy that you enacted in the Bay of Biscay, and then in the waters off Labrador, is now being repeated on a colossal, international scale in the Arctic. The combined pressure of Basque, Dutch, English, and German fleets is having a devastating effect on the bowhead whale populations. The hunting grounds become more and more depleted. The voyages must push ever further into the dangerous, ice-choked polar seas to find their prey. You've basically hunted the whales out of all the easily accessible locations. The whales are now forced to hold their annual general meetings in very, very remote parts of the ocean that require a 3-year voyage and an icebreaker to attend. This perfect storm of overwhelming competition, diminishing resources, and continued political instability back home, with the Spanish and French crowns constantly demanding ships and men for their wars, spells the end of the Golden Age. The shore stations in Labrador are abandoned, the red tiles of their roofs collapsing into the soil to be discovered by archaeologists centuries later. The great fleets that once sailed from San Sebastian and Saint-Jean-de-Luz are reduced to a handful of ships. The industry contracts, shrinking back to the coastal waters where it all began. Yet, the legacy of your craft finds a strange and unexpected afterlife. Basque whaling techniques carried by sailors and specialists are exported to the New World. In the 17th century, a whaling industry using your exact methods, open boats, hand harpoons, and shore-based try-works, is established in colonial Brazil. This distant echo of your golden age will survive there for another 200 years, a living museum of the skills you perfected. But for you in the North Atlantic, the era is unmistakably over. The world has moved on. It turns out that a global monopoly built on the body of a floating, blubbery animal has a finite shelf life. The great Basque whaling fleets are gone. Their galleons either lost to the sea, rotted in their harbors, or conscripted into foreign wars. The bustling, smoky shore stations of Labrador have been reclaimed by the wilderness, their stone try-works collapsing and their red roof tiles sinking into the acidic soil. It would seem that this great ocean-spanning empire left little permanent trace on the world. But you find its echoes not in stone or bone, but in a far more curious and ephemeral place, in language. As the Basque sailors traveled the North Atlantic, they took their unique ancient language with them, and in the crucible of trade and contact, new hybrid languages were born. These are known as pidgins, simplified languages that develop between two or more groups that do not have a language in common. Creating a pidgin is a bit like making a smoothie with whatever you happen to have in the fridge. You throw in a handful of Basque nouns for trade goods, add a healthy dose of local grammar, maybe a few verbs from a third language like French or Spanish, blend it all together, and hope the result is something both parties can understand. For the Basque, this happened in at least two distinct places. The first was in the bays and harbors of their North American operations, where they traded with Algonquian-speaking peoples like the Mi'kmaq and the Innu. From this sustained contact, an Algonquian Basque pidgin emerged. Only fragments of it survive, recorded by French missionaries who were baffled by this strange local dialect. It was a language of pure utility, with words for things like knife, baya from the Basque bai, friend, adesquidex from the Basque adescaid, and various terms for furs and trading. It was the linguistic grease that smoothed the gears of commerce between two utterly different worlds. The great question that historians still argue about is the true extent of this pidgin. Was it just a simple, limited trading jargon, used by a few individuals on the shore and abandoned as soon as the Basque ships left for the season? Or was it a more robust and widely spoken language, a true lingua franca of the coast for over a century, with the few words we have left being just the tip of a much larger linguistic iceberg? Even more surprising is the existence of a second, completely separate Basque pidgin, which developed thousands of miles away in the West Fjords of Iceland. Basque whalers and cod fishermen also frequented the waters around Iceland, leading to another unique linguistic blend. In this case, it was a mix of Basque words with the Old Norse-derived grammar of Icelandic. Several glossaries of this language survive in Icelandic manuscripts from the 17th and 18th centuries. Many of the phrases are exactly what you'd expect from sailors trying to do business. Give me bread, how many fish? But some of the surviving fragments are wonderfully strange. One recorded sentence reads, "For Jew skalt eta bigdel med mor." The grammar is Germanic, but the words are a mix of Basque and Romance languages. It translates rather bluntly, "As you shall pay with your tail." Finding a recorded sentence like this is a priceless gift for linguists. It proves that even 400 years ago, the primary goal of most cross-cultural communication was to figure out who was ripping off whom. Finding these lost words and fractured sentences is like a form of linguistic archaeology. Each one is a tiny fossil that allows you to reconstruct a whole vanished world of communication, of trade, and probably of a great deal of arguing about the price of furs and the quality of fish. The empire of oil has faded, but this curious, lingering echo in human speech remains as a testament to the profound and intimate contact the Basque had with the wider world. Centuries pass. The world you have been journeying through fades from memory into myth. The great Basque whaling enterprise becomes a footnote in the history books. the names of its secret harbors and brave captains forgotten. The shore station at Red Bay, once a bustling hub of industry, is completely swallowed by the earth. Its stone try-works crumble, its wooden wharves rot away, and its red roof tiles become a mysterious layer of red clay in the soil, their origin a puzzle for the few local inhabitants. The entire epic story seems to have vanished without a physical trace. But in the 1970s, a new kind of explorer arrives, armed not with harpoons and sea charts, but with historical documents, trowels, and sonar equipment. Modern archaeology is about to rediscover your lost world. You stand on the shore of Red Bay now, in the 21st century. The air is clean, the water is clear, and the only sounds are the cry of gulls and the whisper of the wind. It is a quiet, peaceful place. But beneath your feet lie the ghosts of that loud, smoky industrial past. Archaeologists have carefully excavated the foundations of the try-works you once toiled at. They have found the remains of the cooperatives, the workshops, and the living quarters. They have unearthed thousands of artifacts, broken barrels, rusted harpoon heads, and the scattered bones of the whales you hunted. It is the fascinating science of getting incredibly excited about sifting through someone else's 400-year-old garbage. But the greatest discovery of all lies not on the land, but beneath the cold, dark water of the harbor. You pull on a thick, insulated dry suit and dive into the frigid bay. The water here is so cold that it's basically a natural deep freeze. It's terrible for a casual swim, but it's absolutely fantastic if you're a 16th century shipwreck hoping to avoid the ravages of time and marine organisms. As you descend, a shape emerges from the gloom. It is a Basque galleon, resting on the seabed, its timbers dark but miraculously intact. This is believed to be the San Juan, a whaling ship that was caught in a sudden autumn storm in 1565 and sank right here in the harbor. It is one of the best preserved ships from the age of exploration ever found. Careful excavation of the wreck reveals a stunning time capsule. You swim through its ghostly hull where barrels of whale oil, the very first product of this transatlantic trade, still lie in the hold. You find the personal effects of the crew, scattered on the seabed. There are leather shoes, a pair of navigational dividers, ceramic pots, and even the remains of a book, its pages fused into a single block. And then there is the most poignant and humanizing discovery of all, thousands upon thousands of cherry pits. Preserved in the cold mud, they are the undeniable evidence that someone on this voyage, more than 400 years ago, had thought to bring along a taste of home, a simple snack of cherries. Finding these pits is such a human detail. It tells you that even on this dangerous industrial mission to the edge of the world, someone still made sure to pack a snack. It speaks volumes about their daily lives and priorities. The discovery of the sunken San Juan raises its own questions. Historians still argue whether the loss of this ship and likely others over the years represented a catastrophic financial blow that contributed significantly to the eventual decline of the Labrador operations, or if it was simply accepted as a routine, if costly part of doing business in such a hostile environment. What is certain is that its rediscovery is a miracle. This ship, and the artifacts it holds, provides a direct, tangible connection to the world you've been exploring. It brings the story out of the realm of legend and grounds it in the physical, archaeological reality of wood, iron, and the simple, enduring pits of a long-ago summer's fruit. You pull back from the sunken ships and the faded, forgotten words. You zoom out from the individual lives, the daily toil, and the bloody, fiery work on the beaches of Labrador and the shores of Svalbard. When you look at the entire 600-year sweep of the Basque whaling epic, you see the faint outline of the modern world being born. These men, in their small ships, chasing a living resource across a dangerous ocean, were unknowingly weaving the very first threads of a truly globalized economy. They were creating a complex, transatlantic supply chain before the term supply chain even existed. It was an enterprise managed with hand-drawn secret maps, driven by profit and fueled by a profound distrust of their competitors, which, when you think about it, is not all that different from how things work today. Their legacy is not just economic, it's baked into the very rules that govern the sea. The ancient Basque fueros, those local laws designed to manage a communal whale hunt, became the foundation for much of modern maritime law. Complex principles governing the division of profits among a crew, the rules for salvaging a lost ship or cargo, and the rights to a discovery. Many of these can be traced back to the precedents set by Basque whalers. The next time you hear about a complicated international maritime dispute, you can probably thank a group of 14th-century Basque fishermen arguing vociferously over who legally owned which part of a beached whale. Their solutions to local problems became the blueprint for global regulations. And so, you are left with the final complex question: how should we remember them? Historians still argue whether the Basque whalers should be celebrated as intrepid pioneers, master mariners, and savvy entrepreneurs who connected continents and lit up Europe, or if they should be condemned as the architects of the first great ecological catastrophe of the modern era. They were the first to prove that a species could be systematically hunted toward extinction for profit, on an industrial scale. Their incredible success set a terrifying precedent for the centuries of resource exploitation that would follow. Their legacy is complicated. They illuminated European cities and helped write the rules for sailing the world's oceans. But they also authored the first draft of the How to Nearly Exterminate an Entire Species for Profit handbook. It's a profoundly mixed and unsettling inheritance. Their story is a microcosm of our own. It is a story of courage and ingenuity, of the relentless human drive to explore and to profit. It is also a story about the unforeseen consequences of success and the tragic repeating pattern of discovering a seemingly infinite resource, only to find, through our own efficiency, its ultimate and devastating limit. The Basque whalers were simply the first to walk that path on a global stage, a journey that continues to define our world to this very day. And so, our long journey through the cold northern seas finally comes to a gentle and quiet close. The last of the great whaling ships has sailed over the horizon, its silhouette fading into the mists of history. The fires of the try-works have long since gone out, their smoke finally cleared from the Arctic air, leaving only the silence of the wind and the waves. Let the echoes of the rhythmic rowing, the sharp crack of the harpoon line, and the creak of old timber all begin to soften and dissolve. There is nothing more to see here, nothing more to learn tonight. The story is told, the work is done, and the past can finally rest. All that is left now is the gentle, steady feeling of peace, a quiet calm that can settle over your mind, just as the evening fog settles over a still and silent harbor. Let your own thoughts drift away now. Let them sail on a calm sea toward a place of deep and effortless rest. The night is quiet. Your bed is safe and comfortable, and there is only the gentle, easy rhythm of your own breathing to guide you now, leading you softly and surely into a peaceful and well-deserved sleep.